This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So I really enjoy this this time of the year and getting to hear different voices and the different experiences that we get to be a part of during rains. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all tonight and wanted to just extend a big welcome to all of you. It's lovely, always lovely to see so many different faces from so many places around the world and that we can have this time together. And I'm zooming into this call from Perth, and I did want to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people who have cared for this place for more than 45,000 years, deeply listening and learning from and living in relationship with the country here. And this relationship is something I'd like to honour. And I'm also going to invite you to silently acknowledge for yourself the land on which you're on at the moment, the people who have traditionally cared for the land, the animals, all of the creatures, offering gratitude to those who hold a deep understanding of the place, the beings, the sky, rocks and water, wherever it is that you are. And humans have traditionally lived in very close connection with the rest of the natural world and understood this relationship in very deep, reverent, and spiritual ways. But nowadays, most of us are far more of an indoor species, glued to our screens, and it's pretty easy to view ourselves as being separate and superior to the rest of the natural world. For many of us, that's how we've been taught to relate to it. We may even at times view the rest of nature as an other that is inconvenient, messy, and increasingly messed up or extreme. Something we understandably maybe don't want to face. But tonight, I'd actually like to invite all of us into reflecting on the relationship we have with the rest of the natural world, and to share a bit about my experience of how engaging with it can be a support to us in practice, in building wisdom, our understanding of the Dhamma, and also our general well-being. And I kind of fell into this quite by accident, as I'll share a little bit later. And maybe because of that, maybe because of how things can be perceived sometimes, I felt quite reluctant at times to share how practicing in nature has become so central to me. But it has been a real support for me in building my practice and capacity to stay present. And it's also been a support as I've faced what's going on in the world and in my own moments of difficulty and struggle. And so as I took some time to kind of reflect on this when I decided on a topic, it was actually really helpful for me in understanding just how important this practice can be for us all, particularly as we face what has been called the polycrisis. And I also recognise that many of you will have had experiences of feeling supported by being out amongst trees, birds, maybe sitting by a lake or by the beach, and notice the way in which this has brought a settling, a sense of peacefulness, even joy to you. And it's not an accident that the monastery at Bodhinyana is set in such a gorgeous location amidst the trees, the bush. And those of you who've been at Jhana Grove too will have seen that environment perhaps and experienced something of the support that offers, not just to us physically, but also mentally, perhaps spiritually in our practice. And so these are some of the things that I'd like to share with you tonight. But I thought as a way of inviting us into this topic, I'd share a poem from an American poet called Rosemary Watola Trommer. And Rosemary is no stranger to suffering in her own life. She's been through the experience of one of her children committing suicide, amongst other things. And she has a deep passion for being amidst the natural world and uses metaphors for that in her writing, as well as using it as a support for her own practice. So this poem by Rosemary is called, and I might not be pronouncing this correctly, Lumbricus terrestris, which is actually the name of the earthworm. On a day when the world is weighty, dark and dense with need, I want to be the earthworm that gives itself over to tunnelling, its every movement an act of bringing spaciousness. And when minutes feel crushed by urgency, I want to meet the world worm-like, which is to say grounded, consistent, even slow. No matter how desperate the situation, the worm does not tunnel faster, nor burrow more. It knows it can take decades to build fine soil. To whatever is compacted, the worm offers its good worm work, quietly bringing porosity to what is trodden, compressed. So often, in my rush to repair, I end up exhausted. Let my gift to the world be my constancy, a devotion to openness, my willingness to be with what is. Let my gift to myself be patience as I tend what is dense and dark. And this poem to me just speaks so beautifully of the challenges, the weightiness of what life can bring, and also the ways in which the rest of nature can offer us inspiration, reminders of what we can do, what is possible as we face this. And I found it interesting as I was preparing that I realised that wanting to extend my meditation practice and the beginnings of a growing relationship with nature really surfaced at a very similar time in my life. And it was also a time when things felt particularly heavy. I'd always loved being out in nature as a child, but it was generally limited to occasional picnics or holidays as we lived in the suburbs. So there wasn't a great deal of green space around our home. We did have 3 trees in our backyard, and I somehow persuaded my 2 brothers that my tree was the tallest one. I think it was really secretly, they only let me have it because it was slightly spiky as well. But I recall climbing up there often, sitting up as high in the branches as I could go, and loving the sense of space, of being closer to the birds and the sky. And then as my own kids were growing up, we did spend a lot of time camping out in nature, but it was often quite busy. We were appreciating moving through beautiful spaces, but there wasn't always a lot of deliberate pausing or noticing. And then there came a point when one of our sons began experiencing chronic migraines, and I found myself struggling to work out how best to help him navigate school and life, as his world was increasingly swallowed up by spending time in a darkened room by himself. It was at this point that I met an occupational therapist who offered both the suggestion that mindfulness might be helpful, and getting outdoors, going for a walk, and particularly looking at the horizon might help in approaching things from a wider perspective. I was intrigued and desperate enough that I began finding more moments to be outdoors. When I had a break or time to fill in, I looked for a park nearby to go wandering in while I waited. And I began meditating, often parked in the car somewhere, overlooking trees or open space. And it wasn't very long before I appreciated how all of this helped me to settle and to allow some space for what I was trying to hold. And it kind of felt like a natural progression that as my meditation practice grew and I wanted to see what it felt like to give more time over to practicing, that I decided the easiest way to make that work could be simply to spend a day out in nature. By then I knew a spot where I could find enough privacy to sit and meditate, and also to walk a little more slowly than usual. where I could be supported by the beauty and the wildness of the environment. I casually mentioned it to Catherine, what I was planning to do, and she asked if she could join me, and then suggested it to another friend. And so it began. We spent the day by ourselves and then met afterwards to talk about what we'd experienced and decided we wanted to make it a more regular happening. That was a number of years ago now. And although what I call nature practice has changed for me now, I feel very fortunate that I've managed to continue setting aside an hour or so most weeks to be out practicing in nature. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time perhaps talking about some of the benefits that I see of us spending time in nature in a different kind of a way to just walking or exercising in nature. So Western science is beginning to realise what Indigenous cultures have always known, that engagement with the natural environment is really important to our health and well-being, both physically and mentally. It can improve our mood, our self-esteem, it reduces our blood pressure, and it can help even increase our parasympathetic activity so that we can rest and digest. And maybe you've heard about forest bathing, which was kind of a movement that came out of Japan in the 1980s, which was encouraging people to go out into the forest and to spend time deliberately, mindfully, kind of wandering amongst the trees. There's also more recently been some research with GPs in Edinburgh, where they've been prescribing and giving patients permission to spend time in nature, giving them a brochure with ideas to encourage them to think of things beyond just exercising, giving them ways to engage and to connect in a different way. And it's interesting that we've forgotten, or maybe our society has so devalued time to experience just how good it can feel to be outdoors. And so when I began practicing amidst the rest of nature, I didn't really understand how helpful it can be to developing awareness and also understanding of some of the wisdom-based aspects of the path. I was really just using natural spaces because it was convenient and it also felt good. But since kind of looking into it a little bit further and reading a little bit more widely, listening to some different teachers, there are a number of good reasons why meditating in nature is so good for our practice. One of these is that meditating inside, although it can be great as far as enabling concentration and stillness, it can be a big struggle for some people. The quiet of a meditation hall can amplify the mind because there are fewer things competing for our attention. And sometimes that's a good thing because we can see what's happening, but sometimes it can be a little too much and we need a gentler way into things. I certainly remember one of the first retreats I did online where I was trying to be a very good yogi, and I sat in a little cottage that I'd rented through Airbnb, was surrounded by beautiful environment, but I was determined I was going to sit inside, I was going to practice, I was going to concentrate, and I sat and I concentrated as best I could until I could do it no longer. And so I took myself out on a bike, somewhat guiltily, and just rode. And I rode past all this beautiful landscape to these big mountains. I And I felt such a release, such a relaxing, as I was really being held by the environment. And I somewhat sheepishly admitted this to the teacher when I had my interview. I said, I've been off enjoying myself. And quite to my surprise, he was very encouraging, and said, use the space, use the vastness to help you balance things. You can have too much inner focus. And it really helped me to begin to understand effort in a very different way. What is sustainable? What supports us when we're practicing? And finding a balance in that. And I really love this quote from Jack Cornfield, which says, I've changed my mind about 100 things. Effort in meditation is one example. I used to think that to become free, you had to practice like a samurai warrior. But now I understand that you have to practice like a devoted mother of a newborn child. It takes the same energy, but has a completely different quality. It's compassion and presence, rather than having to defeat the enemy in battle. And I think one of the reasons why it can be easier to drop into a sense of being present when we're out amidst the rest of the natural world is our senses are so much more vivid. It takes much less effort to pay attention because there's so much input. And it can also be more pleasurable, which enables us to relax. So with all of this, it can be much easier to be grounded and in the present when our senses keep bringing us back. I certainly know for myself, over recent years, I've developed a bit of a rhythm when I'm on a retreat that I know my energy and my concentration is much better in the mornings. So I'll sit in the meditation hall in the mornings, and then in the afternoons, I sit out somewhere where there's light, where there's breeze, where there's sounds, that help to keep bringing me back, particularly if I'm feeling a little sleepy. Those inputs really help me to stay present and also to relax with the practice. Another thing that can be related to practicing in nature is it really helps us to orient to joy and to beauty. I'm sure we've all had the experience of really a sense of awe or joy when we've been out in nature and seen something quite beautiful. And this can be such a lovely way to work with the mind's habit of always focusing on the negative, on the problems. So a walk in nature can be a wonderful way to just let the mind open and to relax and to appreciate beauty and goodness. And we can't really help but develop wisdom as we watch leaves fall, watch the landscape change over time, as we witness death and seasons. We naturally become more aware of change, of impermanence. We see how things change, particularly as we become familiar with a particular place. And also becoming intimate with a particular place can bring a sense of belonging, a sense of safety. We can easily forget that we're part of this world, and that intimacy, that sense of belonging can lead us to love and to want to protect what we love. As we notice bird life and we listen and enjoy sound and let it touch us, and we feel that preciousness, the fragility of it, as we wonder how much longer will we hear this for? And when we're aware of this preciousness, the precariousness of life, it evokes love in us, care, compassion, a desire to protect, to live lightly. And when we take time to connect, we realize we are the earth in relationship with air, with it all. And it means we want to take care of ourselves and whatever part of the earth body we are in contact with. And so I thought tonight I'd love to lead you in a meditation that encourages us to really focus on our connection with the natural world. And, you know, it's tricky to do that when we're all indoors, but it's not impossible. So I'm just going to ask you to give it your best shot. And if it feels more helpful for you to practice in a different way tonight, please feel very free to tune out what I'm saying. But before we start, I am going to invite you to stretch that animal body that you have. And I'm going to use a word that my yoga teacher introduced me to, which is pandiculate. So if you want to pandiculate your body, that's what animals do when they wake up. They stretch, they yawn, and it really helps them to rouse themselves from drowsiness. So just take a few moments to stretch in whatever way feels good to your body at the moment. And when you're ready, just settling into a comfortable position for your body. So just taking a few moments to really settle in. Feel very free to lie down if you like, or sit. Or if you're feeling fairly tired, it can even be helpful to stand up. And you're welcome to move if you need to during the practice, to change position if that's what your body needs. Just taking some moments to really listen to the body, making any little adjustments, and finding as best you can a sense of balancing, relaxation, and also an alertness. And if you like, letting your eyes close, or just resting the gaze downwards. And feeling into the whole body, resting here. Even here in this indoors environment, we can use what's around us. We can use our body to feel into our connection with this world we're a part of. So feeling into the connection of the body on your chair, cushion, mat, whatever it is you're resting on. Feeling whatever part of the body is in connection to the floor. And picturing that floor in connection to the building you're in. And the building resting on the earth further below. And allowing your attention now to move to the skin. Maybe feeling places on your skin that are in contact with clothing, and other places where you can feel the air, the temperature. Noticing how skin reminds you of your connection to the world. Feeling how it's a bridge to the air around you, to any sense of moisture or dryness. Sensing how through the skin you can know the breeze. Those changing temperatures. All of this attuning you to the environment. Seeing what you can sense through the skin in this moment. And allowing attention to rest now on the breath as it enters the body at the nostrils. Noticing if there's any sense of a fragrance from the environment around you. And feeling the breath as it moves deeper into the body. Noticing where you can feel the breath flowing in, flowing out. This sharing of a precious resource. We're taking in oxygen from plants and offering them carbon dioxide with our out-breath. This act of breathing connects us to organisms that can photosynthesize, to plants, algae, and even kelp in the ocean, all joined to us in this moment-to-moment process of breathing and exchanging oxygen for carbon dioxide. Feeling this process as it's happening now in the body. And noticing also sounds in the environment you're in. Perhaps rain, traffic, wind. Feeling how listening connects you to the soundscape you're a part of. Maybe even sounds of the body breathing. Noticing how listening joins you with the life nearby. Now bringing attention back to the whole body. Letting your awareness expand to once again include the earth below you. Feeling a sense of being held here by the earth below you. Just allowing yourself to be held by the earth. Maybe feeling into a sense of safety in this space. You can breathe in, breathe out with ease, resting here, resting body, resting mind. Feeling how the earth rises up to hold and embrace you. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you have to go, no one you have to be. Just being held by the kindness of the earth. And you may like to bring to mind someone you would like to be held in this way. Maybe reflecting on those who are dear to you, being held in this same way, with safety and ease of body and mind. The earth holds all human beings, whether they're people we know, strangers, or people we find difficult to relate to. The earth holds all of us in the same way, with no bias, no discrimination, no separation. And the earth holds the more than human world too, all of the rest of nature. Whether these beings are small or large, in the water or on the land, whether they have legs or feathers, roots or scales, whether they're above the ground or below. The earth holds it all. And this earth doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's connected to a solar system, to a vast universe. We're all interconnected. Our bodies and the earth, the sun and the stars are all made of the same matter, the same basic particles joined in different ways. Feeling into that sense of connection and interconnection, that we're all made of stardust. And now, allowing your attention to return to the breath, just breathing in and out, feeling the grace, the generosity of this earth. No isolation nor separation. Feeling the sense of connection and being at home in your body, in your being. There's nothing more you need to do, go, get, or push away. Just allowing yourself to be imperfectly perfect as you are, resting in the heart of this universe. And we'll have a period of silence now. You may like to continue resting in this way, or to practice in whatever way feels right to you. as we bring this practice to a close, I'd like to invite you to wish all beings everywhere, may all beings throughout the world be at peace. May all beings be at peace.
Helen, would you like to take questions or would you like to speak for more?
Yeah, Chris, I'd like to make some time for people to be able to reflect at the end, but before we do that, I just thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about some of the ways that we can practice within the rest of the natural world. So I talked earlier about simply taking the practice outside, and that can be a very powerful thing, to just sit amidst the natural world, and spending a little bit of time before that and also after it to acknowledge the space and just allow your senses to help you to be more present while you're practicing. So any basic practice outdoors really begins with opening to the senses, whether you're sitting or you're standing or you're meandering. It's bringing an intentional focus to the senses and really letting go of agendas for a period. So if you're moving about, it's a very different mindset to exercising in nature where we're doing something. One of the beautiful things about practicing amidst the natural world is it can really help us to shift into that mode of just being, not needing to achieve something in particular. And because, we're humans, we love to achieve, it can actually be really helpful to have a friend to practice with to help give you the permission to just do nothing, to set an intention together. We're going to spend an hour together, an hour separately in nature, and then come back and just talk about our experience. And in doing that, a really useful way is to actually build a relationship with one particular spot. If you've got a favourite spot that's nearby to where you live, it really enables us, by visiting the same place, to build a sensitivity and an attunement to how that place changes with the seasons, the weather, the time of day, to get to know the animals and the birds and the different creatures who live there. Maybe you can do that once a week. Maybe you've got time once a day to walk past a tree and to stop and take some deliberate breaths and just notice what's happening. And another really helpful practice can simply be to sit and breathe with a place, a bit like we did tonight when I invited you to really sense into this exchange of breath and how it joins us to the rest of the natural world. Gosh, I could talk about so much. One of the really helpful things I think in having time to practice in nature is that we can see quite clearly also the relationship between outer and inner. So something that happens in the outer world and then the response on the inside. For instance, the sun comes out and instantly there might be a response of, oh, warmth, how wonderful. And we can see that liking, that response, that movement towards something. And we can also see the movement away from things, not wanting it to rain, not wanting that ant to be biting my ankle at this point in time. And certainly there are many opportunities for us to use the outer landscape to help us develop a sense of equanimity, particularly when we're feeling churned up inside. It can be very helpful to sit against a solid tree and to feel its steadiness, to know that it experiences a full range of weather and different conditions, and still it stands there. It bends, but it stands and it stays. And there can be something really supportive in having those images to help ourselves develop those qualities within our practice and within our lives. And really, the possibilities are endless for how you might practice in this way. There are lots of really useful resources. In particular, there's a teacher called Mark Coleman in the US who runs a program called Awake in the Wild. He runs whole retreats outside and trains other people to do that. And he has a great book called The Field Guide to Nature Meditation, with lots of really practical ideas of how you can take your practice outside and use that environment to support you in developing. And as always, find others if you can. Find people who are like-minded, who want to practice. And, you know, it's, for me, that sharing of and hearing other people's experiences is such a valuable part of my own learning and my own growth. And having to name something or share something with someone else can make the experience much more vivid, much clearer, can make it stick more easily when we're learning things. And of course, there's always going to be challenges. You might be in a highly urbanized environment, but still you can practice using the rest of nature. Maybe you have an indoor plant that you can sit with. Maybe you can sit on the balcony and feel the wind or the temperature on your skin. You can watch clouds, birds. Get to know the tree that is closest to your house or near work or home. What the research indicates is that it's not actually the total amount of time that we spend in nature that's important. It's how deliberate we are in noticing and making connections and paying attention that really helps us to build a sense of well-being and a connection with the natural world. And we can even do some of that fairly indirectly. You can use soundtracks of natural environments that you can listen to. I know the Plum Village Thich Nhat Hanh tradition have started experimenting with some tracks that they call immersive meditation, where they have different soundscapes with the guided meditation at certain points between it. So you can combine things in that kind of a way. And certainly in the school program, we sometimes use soundtracks and videos as a way of helping students to really tune into their emotions, to notice how they feel after watching or listening, and learning how they can help themselves, regulate through contact with nature. And even though there isn't really a great deal of space, green spaces in the school with trees or garden, one session a week, the teachers do run an outdoor session with students as a part of the mindfulness program, where they engage with senses and training attention. They do things like creating sound maps, learning to ground themselves outdoors using their senses, playing games where they name items they can see or hear, and also doing sitting and walking practices outdoors. There are most certainly still things that you can do when you're in quite an urban environment. And so at this point, I'd really like to open it to any reflections that any of you might have of your own relationship, I guess, with the rest of the natural world and how that might have been a support to you in your practice. Or, of course, if you've got questions, I'm very happy to answer questions. But yeah, just for us to have a bit of a time to be able to share experiences around practicing with the natural world or within the natural world.
Yes, so if any of you would like to unmute, that would be wonderful. Before that, we do have a short comment and question in the chat. Would you like me to read it for you? Helen, would you like me to read you a comment?
I'd love you to, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. When we walk in nature, we can enjoy the beauty of nature. Is it still meditation when we involve our senses? What is the proper way to do walking meditation in nature?
Such a great question. And there are so many different ways that we can practice walking meditation. So many different ways we can direct our attention with walking meditation. And practicing in nature generally lends itself to more of an open or spacious practice as opposed to a highly concentrated practice. So you might want to think about that when you're kind of selecting what you do. It doesn't mean you can't do a concentrated practice in nature, but just by the sheer volume of input that's there, there's a lot that draws you out into a more spacious practice or a more open awareness where you're noticing different things and attention, your awareness might be on where attention is shifting to. So when you're walking, I know in the schools program, each week we give them one focus. So this week it might be focusing on sounds, and that's the focus as you walk. Or it might be focusing on the sensation of the body moving. Or it might be focusing on any smells you can smell in the environment around you. So choosing a focus and then working with that focus, or it might be the whole body, or what is it you notice as you are walking. So yeah, many different ways to be able to practice walking meditation, particularly out in nature.
It's not a question, but because I live in Hong Kong, as you know, there's basically like nature is not a big thing in here because there's no land in general. And then I didn't usually meditate out there because I found there's people everywhere. Even as in nature, there's people walking around. So, but like my reflection with nature is like I do enjoy like seeing like nature. Like I like trees much more than human, to be honest. And then sometimes when I walk out there, when I saw the sunshine like getting through the between the leaves, and then I will feel a sort of like a sense of calmness. And also because a lot of the time my feeling is like trees, nature in general exists much more longer than me. Like they exist before I am here, and then they will probably continue to be here after I die. And then when I reflect on this kind of thing, I will feel like, I don't know, it's just like things are not as important as I thought they are. Like, because like there is a lot of like uncertainty because um when I how to say, when I tend to work a lot and I do too much and then I'm not mindful, and I will get stuck in the hole, and then I will lose the perspective of thinking like, oh, this is worth to be fearful of or anxious of. But I think nature like kind of can put things into perspective, if that makes sense.
I think you're so right, Gloria. You really are. That experience that we've probably all had of, you know, things are just going crazy inside us. And then, you know, a bit like I described when I was on retreat, and then you go to a space or you notice the sky or something that really opens up our perspective, and we understand in a different way how tiny we really are and how much we make of the stories that are going on, and that there is a different reality there. There is a different way of responding to things. Yeah, does that describe something of what you're talking about?
Yes, I think so. I hope there's more nature here, but yes, it's good. It's good enough. Thank you so much for your sharing.
That's a pleasure.
Steve, would you like to unmute?
I have. Oh, that's a
Right.
win.
Welcome. It is a win. It definitely is.
I actually just wanted to add a little bit to what Gloria said. But first, thank you, Helen. Thank you. That was wonderful. And I try to connect with nature every day. I'm lucky to be in northeast Tasmania, and it's beautiful here. Today, the rocks around me here. I'm lucky to have a friend here who's an amateur geologist, and the majority of the rocks here, one group are 400 million years old, and the other group are about 200 million years old. And just bouncing off what Gloria said, I was sitting on them today and just thinking about impermanence, and it was wonderful. I felt really, really good. Earlier in the week, I felt really, really bad. I was pretty ordinary. And that's where that idea of impermanence came to me, that I'm sitting on something that's this particular lot, but 200 million years old. And I'm just a little flash. And that's all I am to this rock that I'm on. And I just found that calming, very, very calming for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the environment really helps you to see that sort of thing, just by being with it. Yeah. Yeah. I've had very similar experiences with rocks of that sense of impermanence, and also a sense of belonging, if that makes sense, in that at times when I sit on a rock or I lay on a rock, there's a sense of also being connected to all the other people who have passed through this place, however many thousands,
Yeah.
tens
Yeah.
of thousands of years ago. How many other people have walked by this rock, have touched this rock, have been in this place.
Sat and looked as I sit and look now. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you, Helen.
Maybe I can make a comment or ask a question.
That would be great.
Yes, please.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks, Helen. Your talk really resonates with me. I'm actually a biologist by training. And I also spent much of my life working for an Indigenous organization here in Canada and defending their rights and also trying to fight environmental destruction, which makes me very critical, which is not very helpful when you try to meditate, and then also the connection to nature, and you're just being aware all the time of the destructions that humans are constantly doing. And my husband and I have moved into nature actually to be closer to it and really being able to enjoy it. At the same time, you're constantly being kind of reminded, of humans being very destructive, and that makes it very hard, I think, to kind of feel that, maybe the calmness and everything, and staying kind of in a positive mindset, which I find is being negative, and maybe that's also because we are German. I had to laugh. One time we had Ajahn Tapalo, who's also German, talking and saying that he's very critical, and I think that's a very German thing to be. And that is not helpful. So I was wondering if you have any advice on how do we stay positive with everything that's going on with what humans are doing to nature, and how do we get out of that negativity, basically.
Yeah, I think it's a very reasonable response that we would feel many emotions around what's happening with the world, particularly if we have a close relationship with nature and we love it and we want to protect it. I know for myself, one of the places I visit at the moment is there's just so many dead trees because we had such a harsh summer. And so some of my practice when I walk out in nature is a holding of all of it. Yes, there's joy, yes, there's beauty, and there's pain, there's loss, there's death. All of this is part of the experience. And I've certainly found it helpful reading some of the work of Joanna Macy. If you've come across Joanna Macy, she's a Buddhist scholar who works in climate activism and other activism. And she has a particular model of approaching all of this, which suggests that we begin with a mindset of gratitude, and then the next step in this cycle of progressing through is that we honour the pain that we feel. This pain is justified. And if we're constantly pushing the pain away and not acknowledging the pain, we can't really move beyond that. So being able to have people that we can speak to about the pain that we feel and share that pain, and really allowing it to be part of our experience, then takes us to the next step in her little cycle thing, which is to be able to see with new eyes. It gives us a different perspective. In order to act, we need to see the pain of what's going on, and that helps us to see what needs to be done and then go forth and actually take action. But if we don't deal with that inner work of the pain that we're feeling, you know, it will always just kind of be there, suppressing like any emotion that we push down. So finding ways to acknowledge it and to allow it to be there, and to inform what we do as well, rather than making it wrong, because, you know, there's a lot of pain in our world at the moment. Yeah. So I hope that helps, but definitely Joanna Macy might be someone, if you haven't come across her work, she might be someone useful to read. She's an amazing woman.
Thanks, I'll look that up.
Mm.
It isn't a question, it's just, Helen, I loved that. I think two places within the meditation world that have made so much difference, well, three actually. First of all, it was Dhammasara, and just the absolute beauty there, even though I'd been to Jhana Grove. And Jhana Grove now, it just, I can think it, I can walk it, I walk those tracks. There's just so much about it that's sort of written now in my body, and it brings, and I mean, yeah, nature and me always, ever since I was a little girl, brought up here in Perth. But we lived close enough to the river when I was a kid, and yeah, it's just, yeah, walking by water, sitting by the sea where I'm meeting a very good friend who's here tonight, tomorrow morning. Just that particular beach is a place that to me is the place I go probably almost every day, just to walk and be. I don't actually sit there, it's a bit crowded, but in summer I sit out at home, it's outside, and it, yeah. And even if it isn't a real sit, if you know what I mean, just being there. And rocks, there's a big monad knocks here, but there's one down at Mount Franklin that for years we'd go to every year. I haven't been for ages. Oh, and other ones, those fast rocks. And as a much younger woman, I started getting that amazing sensation of permanence, impermanence, before I used those words for it. And just how many feet, how many Indigenous feet for how long have walked this rock, how many creatures, and it just, yeah, it's beautiful, and a life that's quite long. I've been fortunate so far, and I can, yeah, trees, places, rocks, water, all through it have been just very important to me. So Helen, thank you through that beautiful journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing that. And Chris, if we've got time, I might just finish with one more poem, if that's okay.
Poem would be a perfect.
So this one is called Still Point by Max Rife, I think is his name. Leaving home for work each day, I hear the trees say, "What's your hurry?" Rooted, they don't understand how in my world we have to rush to keep in step. I haven't even time to stop and tell them how on weekends too schedules wait like nets. It's only on a sick day when I have to venture out to pick up medicine that I understand the trees. There in all their fullness, in a world unpatterned, full of moments, full of spaces, every space a choice. This day has not been turned yet on the lathe. This day lies open, light and shadow. Breath fills the body easily. I step into a world waiting like a quiet lover.